So I just finished the season 8 premiere for The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is one of my absolute favorite shows. I have been watching it since season 1. I have read through the entirety of the comics, and I have gone to more than one panel with Robert Kirkman at Comic-Con just to get some more of my Walking Dead fix in the off-season. I love zombies, I love the horror genre, and I love this show. So I also really appreciate how it's changed from season 1 until now. This episode was also the 100th episode of The Walking Dead, which I think is why they had some callbacks to season 1 as well as some references to the comics. And all in all, I thought that the episode was really good. I was surprised because there was a ton of negative feedback about this episode online. A lot of people saying it was boring and that they wouldn't watch the show anymore and that The Walking Dead is just as bad as they've always thought it was because of this episode. And I was sort of surprised because the episode's fine. It's perfectly adequate. It does a lot of things really, really well, and the things it doesn't do so well, it doesn't do egregiously badly. It just doesn't do them as well as the other things in the episode. So seeing this negative response with such vigor to what should be a relatively uncontroversial and high end of mediocre premiere is just kind of jarring. I sort of think that it's just becoming fashionable to hate on The Walking Dead and any other show that prominently features violence because of reasons. And I think I've done one other video about The Walking Dead on this channel where I called out an article that accused The Walking Dead of basically being fascist propaganda, when in fact you could actually argue based on the comics that it's closer to socialist propaganda if you have to put a political philosophy to it. The entire premise of the show is living versus surviving. The characters could do a lot of things that would make it easier for them to survive if they gave up their humanity and gave up certain things about themselves. But the reason that we stick with the group and the reason we still like these characters is that they choose not to. They prioritize living over surviving. And I think this episode actually did a great job of kind of boiling that down and really encapsulating it in a way that makes the stakes stakier. And my thing is, when you have a story that's got a dramatic line, you have to have good stakes. If I were to compare it to the mediocre stakes that we got in the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery, where all the wind is taken out of the sails because we know how this shit ends, The Walking Dead does a good job of building that up. And in this case, they had Rick visualizing this alternate future of what could happen if they win the war. You know, it was cast in a very fuzzy light with a soft filter on the lens, so you could tell that it was supposed to be kind of a dreamy sequence. But first of all, I thought it was a great callback to the season 7 premiere, where at the end of the episode they had a what-if sort of future where they have Glenn and Abraham sitting around a table sharing a meal with all of the rest of the group that have survived. And it's a very bittersweet scene, and in this case this future is very bittersweet as well because we know we might not ever get to see it. And we know that Rick is going to lose a lot of things on the way even if we do get to see it. And I thought that it did a good job of basically showing us what Rick is fighting for, what they're all willing to die for, why they're putting all of this on the line, why they wouldn't live under the saviors and instead they've decided this is their only option. They do a good job of really justifying the choices that the characters make with that. And I think that that was really important if we're going to be really believing the arc that we're seeing in the coming season. I thought that this part of the episode was one of the stronger parts. Basically, in this episode, we're kind of given 4 distinct timelines. We sort of get the before the battle, during the battle, the immediate aftermath, and then Rick's imagined future. And they're kind of cut and interspersed throughout the episode in a way that makes it really, really interesting to watch. I think that in a lot of ways it makes the characters more sympathetic when you cut those things in, and it makes it so that you really do see why they're making the decisions they're making. All in all, I just loved it. I thought that was a really good way to do it. The one issue that I had with the episode, I think that was my biggest issue overall, is the pacing's a little slow in the beginning, especially when they're building up to this huge herd of walkers that they're bringing to the sanctuary. And that'd be okay. Personally, I'm fine with a slow burn. The problem is if you're doing a slow build-up like that, you have to have the payoff. And this episode, I felt like in a lot of ways just did not have the payoff. If you want to really pay that off, you have to go full hog with the special effects, and I think that they really didn't do that. I think that they kind of cheaped out on some CGI, and you can really tell it does not look great. And I think that that really does undermine a lot of the really, really good cuts and fun shots that they did to build this up. I just feel like they could have done more. I'm stoked to see how Gabriel's storyline turns out. I'm so okay with him getting kidnapped because I hate Father Gabriel. I have always hated Father Gabriel. I don't think he ever fully redeemed himself for basically being a cowardly, treacherous shitbag. And so seeing a plot where he's probably going to get to redeem himself and also I'll finally be rid of him is super, super okay with me. I loved Negan in this episode. Jeffrey Dean Morgan just loves that character so much, although to be honest, I find him a little less threatening now that I've watched all the way through Grey's Anatomy and I can only kind of see him as Danny Duquette, especially when he's just a little scruffy and I'm just like, oh, it's Danny. Oh. But I just really did like this episode, and I thought that a lot of people were really unfair to it. My friend is here to go watch Happy Death Day in theaters with me, so I'm going to go, but let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments down below. Subscribe if you like my videos. I'm sure you will tell me if you don't, and that's all I have. Wiedersehen.